Thank you. Hey, everybody. We're live. Welcome to our book study group for Monday, the 25th of July, 2022. John's here with you, and I see Janet and Linda and Bob and Missy and Catherine and Lindsay. Actually, I don't see Missy. Hopefully, Bob, is Missy with you tonight?
She won't be with me tonight, no.
Just you and me? Okay.
Yep.
We'll get it done. That's all right. Hey, tonight we're on part 3, second iteration of our book study group on this book, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie, but literally part 3 of the book, which included 6 chapters, chapters 5 through 11. Is that it? Yeah, I think so. And I'm excited because there was some great stuff in this chapter. And once again, I'll acknowledge Bob for having recommended this book to our group. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick just to make sure we know what we're going to be discussing tonight. There you go. Part 3, how to break the worry habit before it breaks you. Chapter 6 through 11. There you go. So how to crowd worry out of your mind. Don't let the Beatles get you down. That's Beatles, B-E-E, like bugs, not B-E-A, like musicians. All right. The law that will outlaw many of your worries. Cooperate with the inevitable. Put a stop-loss order on your worries. I thought that was interesting. And don't try to saw sawdust. Yeah, good times. All right, so how to crowd worry out of your mind. Who's got some thoughts? We're going to open it up. Who wants to talk about this chapter, chapter 6?
First thing I thought about was Theodore Roosevelt.
Yeah? Okay.
Familiar with his story? His first wife died in childbirth. Same night, his mother passed away. And he was so stricken with grief that he was an assemblyman at the New York Assembly. He finished his work in the assembly, and then he went out west and made his name as a cowboy.
Mm-hmm.
He was of the opinion that black hair cannot keep up with a person who's on a galloping horse. So he immersed himself in his ranching and all the things that were necessary for him to do in the Dakotas. So he could have gone into deep funk and said, woe is me, look what the horrible things have happened to me. All in the course of 24 hours, I lose my wife. She leaves me a daughter. My mother dies. What am I going to do? But he didn't.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I wasn't familiar with those details, but that sounds...
He was able, essentially, one could say he ran away from it, but he got himself occupied. He didn't give himself time really to get down over the situation.
Mm-hmm. Right. Good stuff. Thank you, sir. Who else? Who else has some thoughts on this one? Well, I've got some thoughts on it. Let me go ahead and pull up my screen, and we will get into some of my notes here on this chapter. Where am I? Here I am. Kindle, John's book. There's that. Yeah, break the worry before it breaks you. So, how to crowd worry out of your mind. The thing that came up for me with this, which we've talked about before in our mastermind group, is the idea that being in present time and doing objective work can be quite therapeutic. So in this guy's case, he realized that it's difficult to worry while you're busy doing something that requires planning and thinking. Okay, so it's not just digging ditches, right? So there's also a thinking aspect to this. But being in present time with your work, which we've read before from other authors, right? So applying purpose, definiteness of decision, and all that. So I resolved to keep busy. I made a list of 242 items that needed attention. This is a guy going around his house doing home repair. 242 items, only 242, right? During the last 2 years, I've completed most of them. Besides, I have filled my life with stimulating activities. So he's being stimulated. 2 nights per week, I attend adult education classes in New York. So it didn't just end with the house improvement stuff. I've gone in for civic activities in my hometown. I'm now chairman of the school board. I attend scores of meetings. I help collect money for the Red Cross and other activities. I'm so busy, I have no time for a worry. So that's the main theme of this chapter. Idle hands do the devil's work. Anybody heard that before? I have. Right. So why? Why does this work? Why does it help to drive out anxiety? Because of the law. One of the most fundamental laws ever revealed in psychology, and that is it's utterly impossible for any human mind, no matter how brilliant, to think of more than one thing at a given time. That's it. Now you can oscillate, but hey, if you're busy, I got to do this, right? I don't have time to oscillate over here and to, get distracted. So we get to be on a mission. It's a very uplifting way to be, on a mission. Now, as I was reading this, I was thinking, all right, so is that license to go be a workaholic? Well, kinda, but, right, we already saw here that this guy, even though he immersed himself in house chores, it did branch out into other things. So there is a balance that comes with this. There are other interests. There are other things that can happen. Well, I highlighted this in pink just because I thought it was, I don't know what to think about this. So Longfellow, his wife died, right? So he was, anyway, it says here his wife had been melting some sealing wax at a candle one day when her clothes caught on fire. Longfellow heard her cries and tried to reach her in time, but she died from the burns. So I highlighted this just because I just want to acknowledge everyone here that you're so able, like you people are so able. Like you could probably melt wax at a candle, and even if your clothes did catch fire, you probably wouldn't die. Like you guys are pretty awesome, all right, compared to this person here who got taken out by a friggin' candle. All right, moving on. Nature also rushes in to fill the vacant mind, right? So the whole vacuum law of prosperity, right? Nature abhors a vacuum. We will not have vacuums, usually with emotions. Why? Because emotions of worry, fear, hate, jealousy, and envy are driven by primeval vigor and the dynamic energy of the jungle. So remember when we read Pitch Anything, Orenclaff, the croc brain, right? Caveman, rocks, meat, right? Run, fight, mate. Aha. All right. So such emotions are so violent that they tend to drive out of our minds, all peaceful, happy thoughts and emotions. It says here is nappy, but I think that was a mistype. So we default to, remember, for those of you who are in our mastermind group full time, we talked about weeds, right? And pulling weeds physically and as well as metaphorically, but pulling weeds out of the garden of our mind. And so I introduced the question, well, why is it that weeds grow with no effort? I think he just answered that here. Because of Caveman John. Caveman John, right? You had to survive, man. Like that's it. So like you always got to be looking for trouble, lest you be consumed by saber-toothed cats and whatever. So there's no effort to grow weeds. You got a vacuum, it's going to get filled. Important stuff, guys. He gives a bunch of stories and anecdotes, but I really like this this quote here. Without purpose, the days would have ended, as such days always end, in disintegration. Without purpose, you're disintegrating. So what do we know about increase and advancement and always moving lifeward? That if you're not doing that, if you're not on an upward spiral, you're on a downward spiral. Nothing rests. So without purpose, and I would add to this, without executing purposeful, action, well, then you disintegrate. And as Solomon said, where there is no vision, the people perish. So purposeful work. Some of the most miserable people I've ever seen are purposeless. They have no why. They have no target. They don't know what their post is. In closing on this chapter, kept up this program for about 3 months. I had broken the habit of worry by that time, so I returned to normal working day. Aha! So it doesn't have to be workaholic. Here's the guy who, got consumed by his work, right? Deliberately. But then after 3 months, return to normal 7, 8 hour days. These days in the 21st century, where, people are working 2 and 3 jobs, this would sound like a vacation, right? So there you go. This event occurred 18 years ago. I have never been troubled with insomnia or worry since then. So this is the rule from this chapter. Keep busy. The worried person must lose himself in action, lest be wither in despair. Any other thoughts on this chapter? Come on out. No? No other thoughts? Okay, then we are on to chapter 7. We're going to rip through this book. Don't let the Beatles get you down. Do you guys know what he was referring to in this? Those little tiny little cuts. There's a saying, death by 1,000 cuts, right? So rather than the big, lightning strike, that didn't take you out, okay? But the Beatles, and use the example of the tree. All right. Who's got some thoughts on don't let the Beatles get you down? Didn't the Beatles, the Beatles, didn't they write a song? I'm down. I'm down. I'm really down. Was that them? I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Janet, you have a thought?
No.
Okay. You were
No
just humming
thoughts.
along.
No purpose. No thoughts.
Okay, I don't see any other hot mics. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. And here we go. Don't let the Beatles get you down. The main idea here is how big all these worries seemed years ago. This is a guy who went through the submarine attack with depth charges for 15 hours. Okay, and he used to have all these trifling worries. How big all those worries seemed years ago. But how absurd they seemed when depth charges were threatening to blow me to kingdom come. I promised myself then and there that if I ever saw the sun and the stars again, I would never worry again. Never. I learned more about the art of living in those 15 terrible hours in that submarine than I had learned by studying books for 4 years in Syracuse University. Perspective, right? Like you're probably going to die now in this tube underwater. He didn't, obviously. Right. So all these trifling things that the Beatles, the ankle biters, the gnats, right? Fully half of the cases in our criminal courts originate in little things. Barroom bravado, domestic wrangling, an insulting remark, a disparaging word, a rude action. Those are the little things that lead to assault and murder. Very few of us are cruelly and greatly wronged. It is the small blows to our self-esteem, the indignities, the little jolts to our vanity, which cause half the heartaches in the world. And, marital disputes and et cetera, et cetera. Okay, but this is from a judge. Right. So what led to that violent act? Little trifles. Perspective. Lack of perspective. I highlighted this because I also got a chuckle out of it. He was at this dinner and talking about, somebody burning the food or cutting the cake wrong or something. He's always making mistakes. He just doesn't try. And so the author says, well, maybe he didn't try to carve. But I certainly give him credit for trying to live with her for 20 years. His wife's always, griping about him. Frankly, I would rather have eaten a couple of hot dogs with mustard in an atmosphere of peace than to have dined on Peking duck and shark fins while listening to her scolding. Right. So there's a bigger game afoot here, right? A well-known legal maxim says, de minimis non curat lex. The law does not concern itself with trifles. Again, this is historical. And neither should the worrier if he wants peace of mind. He cited Ben Franklin in this here as well. Okay, so Franklin would often, kind of just write off, as would Abe Lincoln, right? That spirit of forgiveness, which we read from Andy Andrews, right? When he talked about the traveler's gift. So here we are on this earth with only a few more decades to live. and we lose many irreplaceable hours brooding over grievances that in a year's time will be forgotten by us and by everybody. I've actually done this. Not just brooding. I think we've all done that. But I had this situation where, you guys ever heard the phrase "things are the thieves of time"? So I had this Lexus. Okay, I've had a few. Okay, but I had this Lexus, and there was a little piece of the plastic underside near the back seat where the little cup holders are. They got a little scratch. I mean, a little scratch like that big. Now I like my stuff perfect. Okay, in fact, Lexus, when they came out, it wasn't their catch line, the passionate pursuit of perfection. Perfection. That's what it is. Sell me that, right? So it got this little scratch, which I can't even see in the driver's seat. And I don't know, maybe somebody's foot or something, a little scratch on the plastic. And you you have to get down there and look at it. And I was like, you know what, John, at some point, you're not going to own this car anymore. Like, this isn't the last car you're ever going to get, and forever. And like, you're not even going to give a damn. Right? And whoever buys the car is going to give a damn even less. So stop it. Stop being so consumed and being possessed by your possessions. And that was it. I was like, all right. I knew another guy, and I don't recommend this, nor would I do it. Okay. But I know another guy who said whenever he buys a new motorcycle, he'd immediately tips it over. He tips it over off of the kickstand to get some, dings and scratches. Brand new bike. Now he's not worried about getting dinged and scratched. So this goes to, it goes in multiple directions, as a lot of the instruction in this book does. So why should I be, brooding or worrying or concerning myself with temporal stuff? Finally, he says, to break the worry habit before it breaks you, here's rule number 2. Let's not allow ourselves to be upset by small things we should despise and forget. Remember, life is too short to be little. Any thoughts on this from you big people?
John, it's true. We sometimes things are just too precious in our mind. So in the art world, I remember my roommate, her teacher made them break the crayons. She was taking it for elementary education. And this is what I would just never do. But they had to break their Crayolas, take the labels off of them, just make them, not so precious, that you had to color just right in order to, keep it going. There's the fear of the blank white page. So, take something and make a mark across it. Now it's not blank and white anymore. Just, make it do something, give it some dynamics, do something about it. And now, like pushing over that bike. I love that story. Okay, now you can relax.
Right.
Now you can relax. It's not perfect. And I certainly am a perfectionist, and attempting to not be that way anymore. I mean, to respect your things, yes. Take care of them, yes. But perfectionism doesn't really exist in our world. We try to go toward it. We try to make our businesses the best we can make them, to do our copy, whatever it is, to do the best we can. But we know that we can come back and do more later. We can make it better. So, if you're going to write something, I imagine with your book, and you can tell us when you started your book, did you get the perfect first paragraph or first chapter before you went on? Or did you write down stuff and write down stuff and write down stuff and go back and edit the stuff? And okay. So because people get hung up by doing that first thing so perfectly that they don't get beyond it. Right?
Right.
So
Great point, Jen. Another great example, right, of people so worried about making a mistake. What did Proctor say? He said, well, make big mistakes, you'll learn faster.
I agree. I mean, we welcome them in the sense that we learn from them.
There you go.
And we learn from other people's mistakes if we're astute enough to pay attention. That's where a lot of that has to happen. But I like this very much because it speaks to me all too well.
That's great. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, Linda.
Hey, John. So what comes to mind for me is what you're always saying. Imperfect and done beats, perfect and not done. And the other day, a friend of mine was worried about a misspelled word that was posted. And it was just like, let it go. It's like, nobody cares. It's
right.
And 90% of the people probably won't even notice. So, yeah. But so it's letting go of that stuff. Yeah, you gotta.
You know what, Linda? I've had people where we put out an email or a sales page or whatever, right? So here's the offer, and people are buying the offer, and then here are the other people who didn't buy the offer. Oh, I found 2 misspellings. Right. Yes. Thank you for that. All right. Imperfect and done. Which brings us to the next chapter, the chapter on the law that will outlaw many of your worries. So since it looks like I'm going to go ahead. Yeah, let me do that. All right. So the law, of course, he's talking about the law of averages. If you read the chapter, so you and I could probably eliminate 9/10 of our worries right now if we would cease our fretting long enough to discover whether by the law of averages, there was any real justification for our worries. The most famous insurance company on earth, Lloyd's of London, has made countless millions out of the tendency of everybody to worry about things that rarely happen. They'll insure whatever you got, whatever you're worried about, right? So the facts are, according to the law of averages, it is just as dangerous, just as fatal to try to live from age 50 to age 55 in peacetime as it was to fight in the Battle of Gettysburg. What I'm trying to say is that in times of peace, just as many people die per thousand between the ages of 50 and 55 as were killed per thousand among the 163,000 soldiers who fought at Gettysburg. Right. So the law of averages. Always being so concerned. What might happen? What did Samuel Clemens say? I've had thousands of problems in my life, most of which never actually occurred. So to break the worry habit before it breaks you, rule number 3, let's examine the record. In fact, that's a quote from a mayor of New York, governor of New York, Al Smith, right? When he was being attacked, politically, I heard him answer the attacks of his political enemies by saying over and over, let's examine the record. Nowadays, how dare you examine the record? I mean, anything but facts, right? We don't want to look at facts. All right. So let's examine the record. Let's ask ourselves, what are the chances, according to the law of averages, that this event I am worrying about will ever occur? Pretty friggin' slim. You guys experienced this? Have you experienced where you've, worried about something so remote? Like, well, what if I don't know, slip and fall or get hit by lightning, any stuff like that? I mean, it seems ridiculous to hear it come out of my mouth, but I don't know. Did anybody relate to that? I personally didn't, but.
John, the insurance that comes through the mail, the insurance offers, and many of them are this much money, and this is for accidental death. What are the averages of people who die accidentally versus all the other ways you can die?
Is heart disease still the number one killer?
That's not accidental. That's stupid. That's not taking care of yourself, maybe.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, in terms of accidents versus, failing heart or something, right? I think accidents are still pretty low. Right.
I think so.
Yeah.
But the insurance that's offered is frequent.
Right. Well, it's profitable.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. What's the likelihood that you're going to get hit by lightning or, whatever? So
slip on a banana, or that your
Right.
candle is going to catch your long night clothes.
I'll tell you what, watch out when you're melting candle wax at the, or the,
That's really tragic. I'm sorry that I didn't find that funny. It's really tragic, but she was probably wearing long night clothes and, not the little t-shirty, whatever thing we might be in. And, yeah, maybe we know more. I mean, roll in a rug, do something to put it out. But that's tragic. That's
well,
tragic.
yeah, it was a tragedy, but I guess, maybe Darwin was right. I mean, I don't know. It's like, come on, stop, drop and roll, get some water. I don't know. Or was she wearing like a suit made out of, woven, dynamite fuses or something? I don't know. So
Probably a really long night dress, with
okay.
just where it
Well,
catches. You're doing a thing and it catches.
Despite the fact, and we're going back a chapter or two now, but despite the fact that I thought it was ridiculous, I did find a way to use that as a validation for all of you. None of you have perished in, with the candle. Like, well done, everybody. Well done. All right, good times. Any other thoughts on the law of averages? Law of averages. Okay, let's go on to the next one. We're getting all these beautiful rules here. Cooperate with the inevitable. Another way to get rid of worry before it gets rid of you. It's astonishing how quickly we can accept almost any situation if we have to and adjust ourselves to it and forget about it. So it's kind of like what he talked about before. It's like actually analyze the situation, reconcile yourself to, well, if that's what it is, then that's what it is. Right. So a lot of times people want to work with what should be instead of work with what is. I could see this in business, right? So in business, I have, well, here's what the market should respond to, but it doesn't. Right. So I could sit there, I guess, arguing with myself over the statistics or whatever, or I can resurvey, right, and work with what is. It says here, obviously, circumstances alone do not make us happy or unhappy. So I'm glad he's going in this direction, right? We are cause, not circumstances. It is the way we react to circumstances that determines our feelings. Jesus said that the kingdom of heaven is within you. That is where the kingdom of hell is too, right? So if we're cause, well, then we're cause, right? If you have the power to respond this way, you also have the power to respond that way or to relinquish that power. So in this way, as he's going on here, it says, I would not exchange this experience for a happier one. He's talking about, here's this person who went through this major ordeal, right? A medical situation, multiple operations. It taught him acceptance. It taught him that nothing life could bring him was beyond his strength to endure. There's a saying that God doesn't give you more than what you can handle, right? So I don't know if you're with that idea, but I've heard that as a saying. And if you're with that idea, and of course the punchline to that is, well, I really wish he didn't think so highly of me, But having come through fire, right? Do you not have strength of character and the acknowledgement, the validation of that, right? I mean, who goes through life unscathed? I feel sorry for, the trust fund, silver spoon kid, right? That's got to be hard when life smacks them around, right? So I don't know if any of you here were trust fund babies. Probably not. Maybe. I don't know. I wasn't. Far from it. But having walked through fire, you're more powerful because of it. You've got that strength of character. Now, if we rail and kick against it and grow bitter, we won't change the inevitable, but we will change ourselves. So I heard that, as we go through life, we either get better or bitter. So that's what he's talking about here, is remaining in the driver's seat of your own thoughts, emotions, and abilities. Says here, now look, I'm not advocating that we simply bow down to all the adversities that come our way, not by a long shot. Okay, there's mere fatalism, right? Well, what's going to happen is what's going to happen. I can't do anything about it. So that'd be the exact opposite of causation, responsibility. Okay, fatalism. So as long as there's a chance that we can save a situation, well, then let's fight. But when common sense tells us that we're up against something that is so, and that cannot be otherwise, then in the name of our sanity, let's not look, before, after, and pine for what is not. Work with what is, not with what should be. So there's only one way to happiness, Epictetus taught the Romans, and that is to cease worrying about things which are beyond the power of our will. Beyond the power of our will. The will. It's a mental faculty. What does the will allow us to do? Choose the thought. So beyond the power of our will. So if I cannot, by me taking thought, if I cannot have an effect, then stop worrying. Because I can't have an effect. Now, if I can have an effect, well, then stop worrying because I can have an effect. So it never profits us to worry. Ever. Finally, it says here, the masters of jujitsu teach their principles to bend like the willow, don't resist like the oak. So again, working with what is. Here's the ice storm, says Mother Nature. And here's the willow that says, all right, I'll take that weight and I will bounce back. The ice will melt. Here's the rigid object, that they use the oak in this example, which could crack under that weight. I've been fascinated by palm trees. I don't know if any of you have such a high affinity for palm trees like I do, but you could see like footage of like hurricanes and tropical storms, and these things are bending, and then they're right back up again, and they go for years and years and years like that. They never fall down. There's palm trees right here in my local area that are like skinny, like, I don't know, maybe 18 inches in diameter, the trunk, and they gotta be, I don't know, 30 feet tall or something. It's like all of that weight on that little, yeah. They go, they got the roots that go out and whatever, right? So I just think it's fascinating. I guess be more like a
palms in my front yard.
Yeah.
It goes straight down and deep. It doesn't go out.
Oh, okay.
Straight down and
down.
Deep. Very different.
Well, I'm from Arizona where like the saguaro cactus, which are huge and tall and heavy, right? That they grow out, right? So as high as they are, they're like their roots go out across the rocks and everything else. There's not a whole lot of soil there, right? So I was thinking wide, but they're going deep. Okay, cool. He quotes Reinhold Niebuhr, which we've talked about plenty of times in our group. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Do you know that just about every 12-step fellowship, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, and all this, typically start and or end every meeting with this prayer? So to break the worry habit before it breaks you, rule number 4, cooperate with the inevitable. You guys got some thoughts on that?
I do, John. This chapter really resonated with me. Mm-hmm. Especially, the kingdom of God is within. Of course, my personal experience with, the loss of my son with a car accident, there's nothing I could do to change that. Nothing. Mm-hmm. So you have to go on and you have to learn to be strong. And I never realized how strong I actually was, or am. It was 2 weeks to the day after he had passed that my daughter was in a car accident. And I was driving up the street and I see her and I'm like, oh my God, like how much can one person take? And it was like, at that point, I was like, worrying about anything does nobody any good at all, because whatever's going to happen is going to happen. So, yeah, and then my, daughter was deployed to Afghanistan like 6 years later. And that was another thing. That was another lesson. Like, okay, I can't worry about her being over there. I just can't. because I'll never sleep at night. And I was able to not worry. And then I went to it was like a yellow ribbon thing for parents. And I'm listening to some of these parents talking about some incident that happened to one of the soldiers that was over there. And I'm like, why are you guys talking about this? Like, I was so like upset when I left there, and I said, no, I just can't let that worry me, because I won't sleep at night.
Mm-hmm.
Because whatever's going to happen over there is going to happen over there. And luckily, everybody came back and everybody was fine. But yeah, you know, as a parent, you worry about your kids,
Mm-hmm.
but all the worry in the world isn't going to change anything that's going to happen. So,
Wow. So this hit
anyways,
home. Thank you. Thank you, Linda.
yeah.
Linda, I'm so glad that you learned that. I wish my mother had learned that.
Mhm.
I felt she worried when there was nothing to worry about. It was really hard to be her daughter,
Mhm.
worried
Imagine.
about all the time, you know. But I'll tell you what I don't do. I don't ever ask the universe what else can happen, because I think you get shown. And no, thank you. I'm fine. I'm just the way I am. But
Yeah.
one of the things about this chapter is also it's talking about flexibility, being flexible with what happens. You know, the willow, not the oak. It's a great example, John. It bends, it goes with it. It can just be crazy. I mean, palm trees are where there's hurricanes and storms and massive stuff. And most of the time, they don't crack and break like other trees that you see fall down that have the roots that don't go deep. So for us, if our core beliefs, our integrity, our roots go deep, then other things will affect us less, because we have that strength. And so no matter what business we're running, whatever we're doing, integrity, knowledge, and core belief in ourselves, so that we, oh, that's what happened. Okay, I'll do it differently next time, and go on. Yeah.
Thank you,
Good for
Janet.
you, Linda.
Bob? Bob? Can't hear Bob. Are we still live? Hello?
Connection, because periodically I get slowdowns and even freezes. So am I coming through okay?
Gotcha.
Okay. I was so hoping that the wise man Stuart would be with us tonight, because this chapter is just filled with stoicism. And he could certainly give us an awful lot about Stoic philosophy. Epictetus was quoted in this chapter, and so I certainly do miss getting his riff on this particular chapter. But to Linda's prior point, as I was reading this chapter, I was reminded of something I learned when I was in high school. We were studying the Greek, ancient Greek playwrights and Shakespeare. And they, if you're not familiar with them, all of their plays had 5 acts. And there's the introduction, there's the complication, the climax came in the middle. Climax was the point of no return in Act 3. And at that point, the hero, be he a tragic hero or a comic hero, made a decision that was irrevocable. And the entire outcome of the play depended on that decision in Act 3. Act 4 was the denouement, the downfall, and Act 5 was the resolution. And the one thing that we have to remember, coming back to Linda's point, is that the kingdom of heaven is within you, the kingdom of hell is within you. The protagonist in the Greek tragedies or the Shakespearean tragedies or his comedies, there's a comic hero or a tragic hero. The difference between the two is that at the end of the play, the comic hero lives. The tragic hero dies. Doesn't mean the comedies are necessarily funny, but just at the end, I liken it to Wile E. Coyote. Okay, Wile E. Coyote is always going after the Roadrunner. He always runs off the edge of a cliff and he falls to his doom, but it's a cartoon, so he never ever dies. So he's so obsessed that he goes to perhaps his destruction. That's what the tragic hero does. He hangs on to it, hangs on to it, hangs on to it, and just consumes him, and he dies. The comic hero learns not to beat his head against the wall indefinitely, and learns, well, I'm sadder perhaps, but certainly wiser. So the question becomes, how long do you go beating your head against the wall before you realize that you have you don't have a winning proposition here? And so, what point does persistence become stupidity, I suppose, is what we're asking.
Great
here.
question. Great question. Yes. Bob, you just hit a nerve with me on that.
Sorry.
You just hit a nerve. I would consider myself loyal to a fault, right? As the saying goes. And I've gone down with the ship a couple of times. So what do we value? Which we're about to come up to on another this next chapter, I think, right? And are we actually willing to learn? You see, I could use as a subterfuge, right? On persistence, I never quit. The real story is I don't want to learn. I want things to just be the way they were back in the day. So let me bury my head in the sand because I'm loyal or I'm persistent. Great question, Bob. When does persistence become stupidity? We don't need Epictetus or Stewart for that. You just did it, brother. Thank you. Great question on the floor. Wow. All right. So I guess we all have to set our own barometer on that one. Any other thoughts on working with what is the inevitable? All right, let's get back into the book. We got 2 more chapters and 15 minutes to cover them. I'm excited. We're right on schedule, you guys. That doesn't mean don't share. Keep moving, but don't neglect participating. All right. Put a stop loss order on your worries. You guys know what a stop loss is? So in investing and trading, right? So you can put in an order to buy, right? An order to sell, right? Well, you can sell because you made money, right? So I bought it at $10, now it's 20. I doubled my money, right? Sell it, right? So you lock in the earnings. Or I bought at 10 and now it's worth 5. Let's go ahead and sell because that's it. I've lost enough. Thank you. I'm out, right? So that's a stop loss order. So I'm going to stop losing money now and we're going to go ahead and lock in that loss. All right. But I'm not going to lose any more. So, and here was the advice that the guy got, right? Because he just hung on and hung on and hung on. Well, guess what? When the stock should decline as much as 5 points below its cost, it would be sold automatically, thereby limiting the loss to 5 points. Talking about literally investing, in commodities or stocks or whatever. So I began to place a stop loss order on any and every kind of annoyance and resentment that came to me. I thought this was great. Okay. So I wrote off my 2 years of sweating over that novel. This is the author talking about himself now. He's going to get into being a novelist, a fiction writer. He wrote off the 2 years of sweating over that novel for just what they were worth, a noble experiment, and went forward from there. And he went back into adult education classes and all this. But he had this idea that he was going to write the blizzard. It's going to be the blockbuster, greatest thing ever. Guess what? It was crap. 2 years down. Stop loss, right? Will you sit there and lick his wounds? Am I glad now that I made that decision? Glad. Every time I think about it now, I feel like dancing in the street for sheer joy. I can honestly say that I have never spent a day or an hour since lamenting the fact that I am not another Thomas Hardy. No, he's Dale Carnegie, which Thomas Hardy can't do that. He can't do what Dale Carnegie does. And Dale Carnegie can't do what Tom Hardy does. The cost of a thing is the amount of what I call life, which is required to be exchanged for it immediately or in the long run. This is Thoreau. The cost of a thing is the amount of what I call life, the amount of which is required to be exchanged for it immediately or in the long run. So that's the cost. That's what I'm exchanging, this amount of life. To put it another way, we are fools when we overpay for a thing in terms of what it takes out of our very existence. Overpay. A lot of us overpay. In short, I conceive that a great part of the miseries of mankind are brought upon them by the false estimates they have made for the value of things and by their giving too much for their whistles. He's referring to the Ben Franklin story. Ben Franklin, as a 7-year-old boy, was so damn excited about getting this whistle. He brought all of his copper pieces and threw them on the table and got the whistle and ran away. And then his brothers laughed at him because he gave all his money. It only cost a couple, pennies or whatever. He gave all that he had saved and lamented having overpaid. The bloom was off the rose, right? Because he realized his blunder. So I honestly believe that this is one of the greatest secrets to true peace of mind, a decent sense of values. What's it worth? What are you exchanging for it? So to break the worry habit before it breaks through, rule number 5, whenever we are tempted to throw good money after bad in terms of human living, let's stop and ask ourselves these 3 questions. How much does this thing I am worrying about really matter to me? At what point shall I set a stop loss order on this worry and forget it? And finally, exactly how much shall I pay for this whistle? Have I already paid more than it's worth? Now, as I was reading this, I was thinking about what we were just talking about before, right? Hanging on to the bitter end, that sort of thing. I was also thinking about, oh, I got a scratch in the thing. Oh, my goodness, right? So, and that, being the thief of time and attention, right? Livingness, right? I'm exchanging my life to have attention on that, right? For however long I'm doing that. I also, what crossed my mind was like marriage, right? So we have an epidemic of divorce statistically, right? So are these people that don't value marriage, or, is there, and on the other hand, right, here's the abusive relationship where, the one never leaves because, they're going to change. So what do you guys think about this? What's this stuff worth? Bob?
I'm going to get really personal here. This chapter resonated with me 5 different ways. The first is I introduced the idea of a stop loss order, which is in my DNA, so to speak. My father and his father before him were both in the securities business. And so I learned at a stop loss order. So it was a very short step for me to go to, okay, this is what he's saying. And this is the answer to the question I posed a few moments ago. And that is, you have to make your own determination when your persistence becomes stupidity and put a stop loss order on it. The quotation, drawing Lincoln. And again, that goes back to the traveler's gift. Every day with a forgiving spirit. That you're going to get a lot further in life with a forgiving spirit than by holding grudges. And it took me back to a sermon that I heard. A priest was talking about some Franciscan who lay dying, and the entire Franciscan community was gathered around him, helping him across the River Jordan. And they're all the brethren were there praying, and the dying monk was just a picture of placidity. And they had seen hundreds of monks over the years die, and they were approaching death with great fear and trepidation. Why are you not so scared? Why? And this friar, who had been hardly a model of observing the rule, he was uh, always late for chapel. His penitence was real. He's always late for everything except for every meal. Um, said, I know that I have, committed my fair share of just uh, indiscretions and against the rule, but I have never held a grudge. And as I never held a grudge, I hope that our Lord and Savior does not hold a grudge against me. So that was really wonderful. Finally, I had forgotten that Dale Carnegie was from my neck of the woods, Western Missouri, the Kansas City area. And so many of these anecdotes that he's talking about from his youth, he's talking about places that I'm kind of familiar with. But his Aunt Edith just took the prize. Absolutely took the prize. She was still angry after 50 years at his uncle because of what he had done, because he had told and Maryville, Missouri, I do know, and I think that the shop is still around. The retail store is still around under the same family name. And she was still angry at him for telling the proprietor that. So, a fun book to go through from my perspective. I'm glad I kind of stumbled onto this and was able to recommend it to the group.
Awesome. Thank you, Bob. Yeah, 50 years later, after the husband said, hey, stop spending all our money, she's still griping about it. Yeah, that's great. Good times. Good times. All right. Hey, we got one more chapter. It's a short one. So let's knock it out right here. Don't try to saw sawdust, right? So he's talking about how he's got this fossil, right, that was made 180 million years ago. And it would be, silly for anybody to try and change what was made 180 million years ago or 180 seconds ago, right? We may do something to modify the effects of what happened 180 seconds ago, but we can't possibly change the event that occurred then. Okay. So here was, he quoted George Washington Carver when he lost $40,000 in a bank crash, the savings of his lifetime. When someone asked him if he knew he was bankrupt, he replied, yes, I heard, and went on with his teaching. He wiped the loss out of his mind so completely that he never mentioned it again. Present time, where are we going? Right? Not what happened before. Now, so he should have, what the author was saying, he should have been more like that. Also, he said, I should have analyzed my mistakes and learned a lasting lesson. So we can learn from our mistakes and we can learn from the mishaps and whatever. We just can't change them. It'd be like trying to saw sawdust. It's already sawed. All right. So if you were to read everything that has ever been written about worry by the great scholars of all time, you would never read anything more basic or more profound than such hackneyed proverbs as don't cross your bridges until you come to them, and don't cry over spilt milk. If we only applied those two proverbs instead of snorting at them, we wouldn't need this book at all. So the truth is already here. The way is already here. You can have integrity or not, right? And so this is an idea that's come up for us in this group a few times. It's like, well, if you read, let's say we read a James Allen book, right? Here's the pillars of prosperity, the 8 pillars of prosperity. Great, now what? Do it. Or, all right, let's go on to the next book, right? Because I know I need to hear stuff from different angles, right? Well, at least that's my belief, right? Is that, so this gets in, or the different time. Now I'm ready to apply it. Now that I heard it for the 10,000th time from the other guy, right? Now I can have some integrity. But yeah, don't cry over spilled milk. There it is. There's your proverb. Now get on with life. Yeah. Another way of saying it is you can't grind any grain, you can't saw any logs with water that has already gone down the creek. He's talking about generating power with a water wheel, and making the machinery go, right? The water is already down the creek. You can't grind the grain in the grinding house, but you can saw wrinkles into your face and ulcers into your stomach. You're just not going to get any work done. That water's already downstream. I thought this was interesting. I once paid a visit to Sing Sing, the prison. The thing that astonished me most was that the prisoners there appeared to be about as happy as the average person on the outside. One of the gardeners even whistled while he worked. Right. So who's free? Here's a distinction that I heard was Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl. Man's Search for Meaning. He talked about the difference between freedom and liberty. So here were the Nazis that had ran the prison. Okay, they had more liberty to come and go, but they were not free. Here was some of us, right, in the camp. We did not have the liberty to come and go, but we had freedom. Interesting distinction. All the king's horses and all king's men can't put the past together again. So just remember rule number 7. Don't try to saw sawdust. And here's part 3 in a nutshell. End of section. We're going to get into, just so you guys know, part 4. Part 4, which has another 6 chapters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7, that's what I said. 7. Part 4. Read that next week. All right. Who's got some thoughts on saw and sawdust? Any thoughts on this? And Bob, we are sorry that you were not able to have a good connection tonight. We love to hear you speak, and it was all choppy. So.
Hi, John. Me again. Well, this chapter just reminded me of one of my clients, something that happened to her last week, and how she was just so worried. And there wasn't anything she could do to change it. She had actually had her daughter arrested because she felt that she was unsafe mentally and physically, and she wouldn't do anything about it. So she had her arrested. In doing so, there's now a protective order in place. So when she gets discharged from the hospital, she can't come home, and this, that, and the other thing. And I showed up at the house, and she was just so distraught, and I was able to take her to an attorney and get things straightened out for her. But she hadn't eaten, she hadn't drinking, she hadn't slept. And it was just, the worry had just consumed her so much. And just being able to observe it from the outside and just see, it was terrible. It was terrible. I was just grateful that I was able to help her. But even in doing that, she was still called me the next day and was really, really worried still. And I'm like, you can't do anything about it right now. You just have to let it all play out. Can't change what happened. You can't take it back. Mm-hmm. I guess. Yeah. So, and I'm sure, I mean, I know I've done things in my life that I can't take back, but you got to let it go. Again, it's all about letting it go, right? So, but yeah.
Doing what you can with what you've got in present time.
Right. Yeah. But it was just, I felt so bad for her. Yeah.
Yeah. Linda, as you're saying that, I get a sense of gratitude, which interestingly did not come up yet in this book. Maybe it does in later chapters. But like, Janet before said, she doesn't ask the universe to like show her what's next, right? She's good. I'm good. Right. So how much worse could it be? She never says that. Right. So, yeah. How about a sense of gratitude? It's like, you know what? I don't have those problems. I don't have the psychotic, daughter.
Yeah. It's
good.
Yes. They're suspecting vaccine injury, COVID relation. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yep. It's terrible.
Terrible.
Yep.
All right.
And anyways,
Everybody can take,
Well, John, you don't have a psychotic daughter yet, but
yeah.
if you make her clean her room just way too much and don't
She-
give her creativity, she needs to be a creative person.
She's quite good. Yeah.
I know she is. I know she is. She's wonderful, but you know, my parents didn't understand all that about me. So, you know, I tell my students I'm still teaching all this stuff because I haven't done my crayons and whatever yet. You know, I haven't gone through that stage yet. But Linda, what a story. The only thing you can do to alter the past is to change your attitude about it. How you look at it, how you received it, that will help modify it. And you know, Linda, I'm loving you tonight. the letting things go, and just, you know, I don't ever think it's wise to, if you're grieving, to have yourself so busy that you don't feel and work through that. I think that's a necessary thing. Or whatever your emotions are, I think to push them aside, they're going to come back again, and they're going to come back bigger. So I think you need to face them. But
What about time healing all wounds?
No, time wounds all heals. Is that what you said?
Yeah. What about time heals all wounds?
No, wounds all heals. Time wounds all heals. That's how I heard. Well, but time spent well versus time just pushing it away. A huge difference. I'm not saying to dwell on it and get mired down by it, whatever else, but facing things head on, not going around them, not ignoring them, but just looking them in the eye. That's, yeah, my aunt used to be, she grieved a lot for all of the people and things that happened. And she carried these griefs with her always. And on her deathbed, I was with her the last week. I spent every minute with her in the hospital the last week. And she was 94, my mom's sister. And she said, you know, all those things hurt you. But that was her, you know, I think if she had known earlier, she might have found a different way to work with it. She said they just all hurt you, you know, take from you. So, yeah.
Thank you, Janet.
Yeah, you're welcome. Are we going to hear from Bob? He had something to say.
I hope so. If his band.
This will be brief. He juxtaposed the two hackneyed proverbs: "Don't cry over spilled milk," and "Don't cross the bridge till you come to it," and distilled into a single aphorism. It's, you can only live in the present.
Bob, you went muted again in the middle. Bob, you got
Yeah,
muted again in the middle.
Hackneyed proverbs, putting them together, you can only live in the present.
right.
Keep going.
And you can't dwell on the past, on the present. Do what you can with the time that you're in. Otherwise, you're going to be terribly unhappy carrying the baggage of the past and worrying about the future.
Well said. Thank you, Bob. Say hi to Missy for us. We love Missy. With that, we will go ahead and wrap up. Was it 6 or 7 more chapters? Anyway, section 4 of the book, part 4. And then we'll get back here, same bat time next week, 9 p.m. Monday nights. If you're seeing this on the YouTube thingy, go ahead and check out JLSuccessMastermind.com and join the conversation.